Good evening, everybody. Welcome aboard. Dr. Peter Glidden, your steadfast advocate for health. Tonight's webinar is cholesterol myth-busting, rolling back the curtains once and for all, helping Dr. Glidden advocates and their guests to understand what's going on here with the oft extremely misunderstood notion of cholesterol. Is it good? Is it bad? What's the real story here outside of the pharmaceutical spin? I am your steadfast advocate for health, Dr. Peter Glidden. For those of you new to me, I am a licensed naturopathic physician. I have 27 years of clinical experience helping people to recover their health with science-based, clinically verified, holistic therapeutics. What we emphasize in these health education webinars is medical nutrition. Let's give a look to see who is with us tonight. Mary Gilbreth is with us. Jesus, it's always good to see Jesus here. Christophe Millicent, enchanté, Christophe, comment ça va? Sarah Bill Tamiko from Texas, Decker Roger. Ifachuwudi Ubaka. And I hope I didn't bastardize that too much. Ifachuwudi Ubaka. Michael from Kansas. 43 people with us from all around the world. I would encourage people that when they log in the future, type in your name, because if you don't type in your name, I can only see the IP address of your computer. And that's a little off-putting, but we have James here from the United States. A lot of people from the U.S., one person from, I believe that is Norway, one person from Sweden, a couple people from Canada, or maybe that's Switzerland. I think it's Sweden. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Peter Glidden here. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's presentation, understanding cholesterol, attempting to have a sophisticated, unbiased understanding of a question that's become very complicated, and for reasons which have everything to do with money and pharmaceutical spin, intellectual cowardice, and not much else. Let's jump right into the deep end of the pool and see what's what. Now, to set the stage here and to put everything in perspective, because perspective is very important when we are attempting to understand seemingly complicated issues. Your medical doctor may be the nicest person that God ever created, but your medical doctor does not know what's best for you. Your medical doctor only knows what they've been trained in. And what MDs have been trained in is one piece of the pie of medical science. It's referred to as allopathic reductionistic medicine. In the overall scheme of things, as far as medicine is concerned, we have many different types of medicine. My type of medicine, naturopathic medicine, chiropractic medicine, osteopathic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, which I've outlined here, but lots more, Ayurvedic medicine, acupuncture, herbalism. There are many different types of medicine, but we have become socialized over the last 100 years of pharmaceutical monopolization of the medical marketplace that the only people that practice medicine are the MDs, and everybody else practices some substandard alternative medicine. This, of course, is nonsense. Saying what I do is alternative is like saying that the only real dog is a German Shepherd and every other dog is an alternative dog. The only real oil company is BP. All other companies, oil companies, are alternative companies. You wouldn't accept that ridiculous intellectual notion, but interestingly, this is what most people in the world have been led to believe, that MDs own the domain of medicine and everybody else practices some substandard alternative. Nothing could be further from the truth. Again, by way of perspective, it's important to understand where people are coming from, right? If you're having a political argument with a Republican, it would be in the United States, or a conservative in the UK, it would be important for you to understand that they are conservative or Republicans because you have a perspective on which to bring to bear your arguments. We need perspective on everything. Well, interestingly enough, the philosophy of medicine that your MD is trained in, allopathic reductionism, argues that the human body is a machine made of parts. There is no inherent soul. There is no spiritual force. God does not exist. Consciousness itself is a function of biochemistry. The body does not have an inherent ability to fix itself. If it did, it would never have gotten sick in the first place. This is the argument. And it's the medical doctor's job not to cure the condition, but to manage your symptoms with drugs and surgery. Because, according to their philosophical understanding of how the body works, the body doesn't have the ability to heal itself. The body is a machine made of parts, and so when you're sick, you get one medicine for the arthritis, one medicine for the heartburn, one medicine for the blood pressure, one medicine for the insomnia, etc., etc., etc. And interestingly, the medicines that you're given are not intended to cure the problem. Your medical doctor may be the nicest person God ever created, but they are not trained in how to cure heartburn. They can manage it with the little purple pill. If they can't cure heartburn, how effective do you think they're going to be at curing cancer? Or, in this case, atherosclerosis or coronary heart disease? Well, the simple answer is not very much. Interestingly enough, your medical doctor in the United States is the leading cause of death, and their therapeutics are also the leading cause of bankruptcy. Holistic physicians argue that this is so because the most expensive type of medicine is the one that does not work. This is the philosophy inside of which your medical doctor is trained. Contrary to this, every other physician in the world except the MDs are trained in the holistic method. Now, I'm a naturopathic doctor. The initials after my name are ND. But chiropractors, homeopaths, herbalists, osteopaths, everybody, well, not the osteopaths. They used to be holistic, but they're not anymore. Every other medical system in the world espouses the holistic method, and holistic philosophy argues the body is a complex system of interrelated parts that you have to treat everything. You can't just treat a piece of the body. You have to treat everything because everything is in fact connected. The body is inhabited by a soul which brings intelligence to play. The body is smart. The body is so smart it knew how to grow itself all by itself from a tiny single cell into you. And therefore, if the body was smart enough to know how to fix itself or to know how to grow itself, the holistic physicians argue, son of a gun, it's probably smart enough to know how to fix itself. And whereas the medical doctors deliver one medicine to each piece of the body that's in trouble, holistic physicians deliver a systemic treatment, the intention of which is to, in point of fact, support the body's ability to cure the condition. And this is the fundamental naturopathic maxim. Give the body the nutrients that it needs to manage its affairs. Stop putting food into the body which is harming the body, and help the body to clean itself out, detoxify itself. If you do these three things, nutrify, eliminate foods that are deleterious, and detoxify the system on a regular basis, then you will go a long way towards supporting and promoting your body's ability to optimize its structure and function. You don't get clogged arteries because you have arteries. You don't get high blood pressure because you have a heart, and you don't get arthritis because you have a joint. Holistic physicians argue that these things happen because the body has run out of the nutrients necessary to maintain structural integrity, and because you are unwittingly eating food on a regular basis which is gumming up the works. Probably not a good idea to take advice about what food is healthy from medical doctors who've had no training in medical nutrition. Sadly, that's what we do. It's also probably not a good idea to take advice about which food to eat from the people who make and profit from the sale of the food. Regretfully, that's exactly what we've done here all around the world, not just in the United States, for the last 100 years. And myself and my colleagues argue this is why we suffer. We are suffering needlessly here because the medical philosophy that the MD is trained in is insufficient to the cause. They are the wrong dog for the hunt if you are attempting to cure your health condition. The MDs are the right job for the hunt if you have a bullet in your arm, if you have a broken bone, if you, in point of fact, do need surgery. That is the wheelhouse of reductionistic allopathic medicine, trauma care and surgery when it's necessary. The body has a built-in God-given ability to fix itself. The body is inhabited by a dynamic spiritual force which is intelligent, and it is the presence of this spiritual force inside of the body which is managing all of the millions of automatic biochemical reactions that are happening in your body every second of every day. Now, it's meat and potatoes time. We're going to talk about cholesterol here now in the context of a short exposition such as I have the honor and pleasure of delivering this evening. I do not have time to go into detailed depth analysis. I'm going to give you the bullet points of what the research shows. I strongly encourage you, because this is such an intellectual hot potato, because everybody all around the world has been brainwashed by the MDs and the pharmaceutical industry that cholesterol is the Antichrist. There is so much cognitive dissonance which exists over this issue. In order to solidify what I and my colleagues are talking about, in order to wrap your head around the truth of the matter and pop out of the matrix of Machiavellian, mediocre, MD-directed madness, it would be prudent for you to educate yourself. And I've got 2 books here which are sufficient to that cause. The Great Cholesterol Myth by Johnny Bowden, Ph.D., and Stephen Sinatra, M.D. In addition to that, The Cholesterol Myths, Exploring the Fallacy that Saturated Fat and Cholesterol Cause Heart Disease by Ufi Ravenskov. Actually, this latter of the 2 books you can get for free. You can download it for free. Imagine that, as an ebook at smashwords.com, smashwords.com. Most of the information that I'm presenting in tonight's webinar has been gleaned from these 2 books. I'm only able, because of the time allotment here, to give you the bullet points. If you want to become a student of this subject and really ground yourself in the science, then getting these books and reading them is mandatory. So let's see what we can see. Now, interestingly enough, contrary to popular belief, cholesterol is necessary for the optimal health of the human body. Cholesterol is so important to the human body that your body makes it. Your liver actually makes cholesterol. If you don't eat enough fat, if your body starts to become deficient in cholesterol because it needs it for so many things, it'll start to make it. Now, from a nitpicky scientific metabolic point of view, cholesterol is referred to as a fat, but in point of fat, biochemically it is best described as an alcohol. Interesting. But it doesn't act like an alcohol because alcohols dissolve in water. Cholesterol does not. And this is one of the reasons that cholesterol is so beneficial and useful to the human body, because the millions of cells in the human body use cholesterol. The millions of cells in the human body use cholesterol to become waterproof. Interestingly enough, in order for electrical signals to propagate, waterproofing the electrical channel is necessary and mandatory, so the brain and the central nervous system stockpile cholesterol. Over 75% of your central nervous system, your brain and your nerves, is made from cholesterol. Fascinating. Interestingly enough, all of the steroid hormones in your body, sex hormones and stress hormones, are made from cholesterol. Imagine that. So if with statin drugs and fat-free diets you drive cholesterol into the ditch, what would you expect would be a side effect of that treatment? Alzheimer's disease, cognitive difficulties because your brain dries up, and also erectile dysfunction in men and menopausal symptoms which last for years instead of months. These three things are all on the rise while we have been unwittingly taking statin drugs like candy under the bad advice of medical doctors who quite simply, are not paying attention to the published literature. By the way, the information I'm presenting tonight is academic. It's not arguable. It's academic. And again, I encourage you to ground yourself in the science by getting your hands on those two books and reading them cover to cover. The point I'm trying to make here is that cholesterol is not the Antichrist, that cholesterol is not just a little important, but it is exceedingly important for your body to function the way that nature and God intended it. Now, of course, any discussion of cholesterol would not be complete if we did not elucidate nor talk about LDL and HDL. Everybody talks about LDL and HDL as if they know what it is, but very few people do. Now remember, cholesterol is fat soluble, it's not water soluble. Because of this, in order for cholesterol to be transported through the blood, which is water, it needs to be carried through the blood. It can't just float through the blood. It needs to be carried through the blood. And lipoproteins carry cholesterol through the blood. There are two main classifications of lipoproteins, LDL and HDL. And these lipoproteins are like submarines. It's a good metaphor. It's like a submarine in your blood that's carrying cholesterol. The crew is the cholesterol. Cholesterol is inside the sub. The sub is carrying cholesterol to wherever the body wants it to be delivered. So, in this metaphor, the lipoproteins, low-density lipoprotein for LDL, high-density lipoprotein for HDL, are the vehicles which transport cholesterol through the body. LDL, which is by far the most abundant lipoprotein in the body, as 60 to 80% of all lipoproteins in the body are LDL. They carry cholesterol from the liver where it's made to wherever the body needs it. HDL carries cholesterol from where it's being used back to the liver, and that consists of about 20 to 40% of the lipoproteins in the body. Now, this begs the question, well, if LDL is carrying cholesterol from the liver to the tissues that need it, and HDL is carrying cholesterol from the tissues back to the liver, why is it considered good or why is it considered bad? Where did that start? And the simple answer is it's a misnomer based on fuzzy science. Again, it's reality by consensus. When 100 medical doctors get together and say that LDL is bad cholesterol and HDL is good cholesterol, everybody starts to believe it, and then it becomes ensconced into the collective consciousness of humanity, similar to the flat earth, similar to the justification for slavery and childhood labor and the fact that women aren't smart enough to vote, right? Collective unreality myths that have grabbed hold because a handful of people believed it was true and then it became reality by consensus. In point of fact, there is no such thing as good cholesterol. There is no such thing as bad cholesterol. These are scientific misnomers which have caught on. Why? Because most medical doctors simply do not read the literature. Now, cholesterol, interestingly enough, is unrelated. It is unrelated to clogging of the arteries, aka atherosclerosis. It is unrelated to atherosclerosis. Interestingly enough, just as many people with low cholesterol get heart disease, clogged arteries, as people with high cholesterol do. So, if people with low cholesterol get clogged arteries and people with high cholesterol get clogged arteries, how can cholesterol be associated with clogged arteries? It's not. The level of cholesterol in your body has nothing at all to do with the metabolic process that leads to your arteries getting clogged. Now, here are 50 published medical citations, 50 articles published in medical journals, which support what I just said. Just as many people with low cholesterol got heart disease as those with high cholesterol, and cholesterol is unrelated to atherosclerosis. If anybody tells you that this is a whimsical notion brought to the scientific table by a crazy granola-eating naturopath, well, just laugh and walk away. I mean, you're welcome to your own opinion, but you most certainly are not welcome to your own set of facts. The facts are in, ladies and gentlemen. Believe it or not, the literature is clear on this. There is no relationship between cholesterol levels and hardening of the arteries. Here's an interesting study, 1994. Researchers use acronyms, right? They come up with creative acronyms for the name of their research project. The Antihypertensive and Lipid-Lowering Treatment, the ALHAT study, in 1994 was designed to come up with a treatment to prevent heart attacks. They looked at 10,000 people with high HDL, 10,000 people with high HDL. They divided them into two groups. Statin drug group, they got a statin drug called Pravachol, which is a cholesterol-lowering drug, and the other group, diet. They just changed their diet and exercised. The results, 10,000 participants, survey says, the statin drug did not reduce death rate from heart attacks or death rates from any other cause. Just as many people died in the statin drug group as in the diet group. The statin drug was ineffective, completely ineffective at modifying heart disease. Another study, Ascot, LLA, this had nothing to do with neckties. The Anglo-Scandinavian Cardiac Outcomes Trial lipid-lowering arm. I wonder what they were drinking when they came up with that name. Again, 10,000 patients, that must be the magic number. They looked at 10,000 patients with hypertension and who were at cardiac risk according to their lipid level profiles. They divided those people into two groups, a placebo group and Lipitor. Everybody's favorite, Lipitor. Everybody's favorite cholesterol-lowering statin drug, Lipitor. After 1 year, the Lipitor group benefited, and these were the results that the medical doctors who wrote this journal article trumpeted all around planet Earth. Lipitor is better. The results are clear. Hands down, the results are clear. Well, not so much. Because after 3 years, there was absolutely no statistical difference in the number of deaths between the two groups. But this part of the data was left out of the public relations campaign. Interestingly enough, all 14 authors of the study, all of them MDs, were financially tied, heavily financially tied to drug companies that make statin drugs. Now, if a chiropractor were to do this, if a naturopath, if an herbalist, if anybody else in medicine were to do this type of bad science, they would be thrown in jail. But when the medical doctors do it, not only do we not recognize it culturally, but we give them a pass. And their colleagues, who did not read the research all the way through, also give them a pass. Now, the last time I looked, we hoisted MDs up onto the altar of being a demigod, giving them all of the social cachet associated with the acronym of being an MD. And we expect that they are the gatekeepers of science because it's too complicated for us to understand. But I'm here to tell you that the medical doctors don't read the research. If they did, they never would have promoted the use of statin drugs. Again, these are academic facts. You can argue all day long that 2 + 2 = 5, but if you do, you will be wrong. And if I was involved in a bank robbery and I'm sitting in the car, I'm the driver, all I do is drive the car and my buddies are in the bank and they're shooting up people and robbing the bank, I get charged with manslaughter and robbery the same way they do, even though I never touched a gun. It should be the same way with medical doctors who tell us that statin drugs are really great when they haven't read the research. But because they monopolize the medical marketplace, there are no consequences whatsoever. It's good to be the king. Now, interestingly enough, remember, we're objective here. We're not just bashing pharmaceuticals. Remember, it's not the drug, it's how it's used. Thank God for Novocaine. Thank God for some antibiotics. Thank God for some pain medications. It's not the gun, it's how it's used. It's not the drug, it's how it's used. There were 3 trials which, when looked at from a broad perspective, showed that there were 41, 24, or 28% reductions in negative outcomes associated with heart disease. Negative outcomes associated with heart disease. Now, on the surface, this seems like a big deal. But when you actually drill it down and look at the numbers, it's quite a different story. When you look at the number of people who actually died from a heart attack during these studies, in the 4S study, the group that had no statins, they had a 91.5% chance of not dying from the second heart attack they got if they weren't taking a statin drug. If they were taking a statin drug, they had a 95% chance of not dying, which means the statin drugs only inferred a 3.5% increased chance of not dying. Hardly statistically significant. The CARE research project looked at 90 patients. Well, when you look at the number of people who died from a heart attack in the CARE research project, in order to save one person's life, you would have needed to treat 90 people with the statin drug. Again, not that good a return on your investment if what you are investing in is actually saving people's lives. If you're investing in selling statin drugs, it's a good deal. The Woskop study, the people who did not take a statin drug, they had a heart attack and they had a 98.2 chance of living. People with the statin drug, a 98.8 chance, so there was only a 0.6% increased chance of surviving your next heart attack if you swallowed a statin drug. But when you hear the information that's pitched to the American public, it paints quite a different picture. And again, this type of scientific misdirection can only exist inside of a monopoly, which is propped up and supported by medical doctors who are too cowardly to step up and say something, or too lazy to read and understand the literature in the first place. Interestingly enough, the problems associated with statin drugs are underreported. The problems associated with statin drugs are underreported, not surprising. Low cholesterol actually has been documented to be associated with an increased chance of death. The lower your cholesterol, the sooner you die. The lower your cholesterol, the sooner you die. Published. Cancer is associated with low levels of LDL. Cancer is also associated with statin drug use. There's a high percentage of birth defect risk in women who take statin drugs, get pregnant, and continue to take statin drugs. Peripheral neuropathy, short temper and aggressive behavior, kidney failure, death from kidney failure, and dementia are all known side effects of statin drugs. And remember, in medicine, it's a cost-benefit ratio, right? What's the treatment going to cost us physiologically, and what are we going to benefit from it? Well, when you look at a cost-benefit relationship with statin drugs, the costs far outweigh the benefits of the drugs. And here's my favorite. This is a graph of Alzheimer's incidence from 1800 to 2000. 1800 is way over here. 1800 is way down here. Let me look on the graph for you. 1980 is, it's way over. See where the red arrow starts to go up? It's right around 1980. Interestingly enough, the same time frame inside of which statin drugs were introduced into the marketplace. We believe, a handful of my colleagues and I believe, that Alzheimer's, the rise in Alzheimer's has risen from obscurity, as you can see on the lower graph there. It's risen from obscurity to become the sixth leading cause of death, and it all happened in the 1980s. It all happened in the 80s. And then escalated from there. Well, what else happened in the 80s? Statin drugs were introduced to the marketplace. Not just a little bit. For 5 or 6 years, more or less, statin drugs were the largest selling drugs in the world. $20 to $25 billion a year in statin drug sales. Everybody and their brothers taking statin drugs, which, as far as we're concerned, drives Alzheimer's, drives erectile dysfunction, and drives menopausal symptoms. But these causal relationships are not being investigated by conventional medical doctors because, remember, your medical doctor is not trained in medicine. They're trained in allopathic reductionistic medicine. And all things being equal, medical doctors are amongst the most cowardly intellectual people I have ever met in my life. Let's do a review and then get to the good stuff. Cholesterol is necessary for health. There's no such thing as good or bad cholesterol. People with low blood cholesterol get just as many heart attacks as people with high blood cholesterol. There's no evidence to suggest that heart disease is related to cholesterol levels whatsoever. Statin drugs do help in the prevention of heart disease, but not because of the lowering of cholesterol. And statin drug side effects outweigh their benefits. Interestingly enough, the higher the cholesterol, the longer the life. Again, I urge you to get these 2 books and read them, because you need more information. You need the nuts and bolts of this stuff, right? I'm just giving you the bullet points. You need to read this through a couple of times in order for it to sink down into your corpus callosum. The Great Cholesterol Myth and Ufi Ravenskov's book. Let me see if I can fix that. Hold on. Let's see if it'll work this time. Nope, it didn't work that time. Nonetheless, let me see. I need to fix this here. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Bear with me. Thank you for your patience. Let's see if it works this time. So let's review. Cholesterol is necessary for health. There's no such thing as good or bad cholesterol. People with low blood cholesterol get just as much heart disease as people with high blood cholesterol. There's no evidence to suggest that heart disease is related to cholesterol levels at all. Statin drugs do help in the prevention of heart disease, but it's got nothing to do with their cholesterol-lowering effects. And the statin drug side effects far outweigh their benefits. Interestingly enough, the higher the cholesterol, the longer your life. Now, inquiring minds want to know how, in light of this information, again, which I encourage you to drill down and saturate your brain with by reading those two books that I made reference to at the beginning of the lecture. I encourage you to read those books. But inquiring minds want to know, with so much published literature to the contrary, how is it possible that statin drugs are still used as much as they are? Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Follow the money. When you understand that the Food and Drug Administration, Health Canada, and the European Medical Agency does not work for the citizens, it works for the pharmaceutical industry. When you understand that, everything becomes crystal clear. And again, the biggest reason why misinformation to such a large extent like this can exist is because we don't have a free medical market. If we had a free medical market, people would gravitate towards the therapeutics that actually worked. My colleagues and I fix heart disease all of the time. We fix heart disease all of the time. But most people don't even know how to pronounce naturopathy, let alone know what to do to fix it. And this is a problem. This is why education, like this webinar, is so very important. Well, then inquiring minds want to know, look, if it's not cholesterol, well, what the heck is it? What is it that causes atherosclerosis? Well, the research has been done. Smoking contributes massively towards it. Buildup of a biochemical in the body called homocysteine causes it. Deficiencies in the trace mineral copper causes it. Too much iron in the blood causes it. Weakening of a collagen matrix in the arteries causes it. Oxidized cholesterol causes it. And of course, the biggest cause, Obama. I mean, isn't Obama the reason that everything bad happens? Isn't that what I've heard? All right. It's Obama's got nothing to do with it. But these things do, in point of fact, contribute massively towards the genesis of crap building up inside your arteries. Which begs the question, well, what are we going to do about it? If this stuff is building up inside of the body and we know why it's building up, well, what are we going to do about it? Well, my colleagues and I have been answering this question for 50 years. Here's what you do about it. Smoking. You give minerals and antioxidants. One of the biggest causes for people to crave anything, crave cigarettes, crave calories, crave sugar, crave sex, crave alcohol, crave anything is because their bodies are minerally deficient. If your body is deficient in minerals, you start craving things. You crave tobacco, you get addicted to nicotine. It's a chemical addiction. It's not psychological, it's chemical. So what do? We attempt to get to the root cause of what the problem is. So we give minerals to help cut the cravings, encourage people to get on board with a nicotine patch, and stop hanging out with people who are smoking. Also consume massive amounts of antioxidants to negate the negative effects that the carcinogens and the free radicals in smoke have on the circulatory system. It's not rocket science. What about too much homocysteine? That's easy. B vitamins neutralize homocysteine. B vitamins, be like baby. Take a B vitamin supplement. Oh, but didn't my medical doctor tell me those vitamins only gave me expensive urine? Your medical doctor's an idiot. Oh, they just pass through the body. Well, so does alcohol. Does alcohol do nothing when it passes through the body? If any medical professional tells you that vitamins just give you expensive urine, you should report them to the Board of Medicine and have their license terminated. What do we do for copper deficiencies? Wait a minute, this is a tough one. Let me think. What am I going to do? I know, I'll give copper. How am I going to do that? I'm going to do that with plant-derived colloidal copper because that's the best way to do it. I'm also going to give selenium because selenium and copper have an interesting relationship. Too much selenium, not enough copper. Too much copper, not enough selenium. It's like calcium and magnesium. There needs to be a balance. So we give trace mineral supplements of copper. Imagine that. What do we do for too much iron? You're never going to guess. Copper. What does the body need to transport iron the way that nature intended it? Copper. If you don't have copper, you're not going to be able to transport iron. It's going to build up. You need minerals. Again, it all comes back to minerals. What do you do for weak collagen? Weak collagen in the arteries? Well, that's caused by a copper deficiency. Imagine that. You can also give vitamin C, the herbal medicine hawthorn, and amino acids. These are the things that the body needs to have strong collagen. Interestingly enough here, it's the same process in the artery. Weak collagen in the artery, which is caused by not enough vitamin C, which causes scurvy. It's the same process. It just happens in another part of the body. It doesn't happen in the artery. It happens in the skin with scurvy and ligaments and tendons. What do we do for oxidized cholesterol? I know. Let's give antioxidants. I think that's a good idea. And also stop eating food that pours free radicals into the body because free radicals cause oxidative damage. Free radicals cause cholesterol to become oxidized. Free radicals cause a lot of things to become oxidized. What foods are high in free radicals? Olive oil, Dr. Oz's favorite, and fried food. If you really want to be optimally healthy, you wouldn't even be downwind of fried food. That's how bad it is. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we've been convinced that healing is a complicated, sophisticated process that can only happen in multi-million-dollar high-tech heart emergency rooms, cardiac care. Well, surgery is complicated. Healing is easy. Stop eating stuff that gums up the works. Give your body the nutrients it needs. And get the heck out of the way. Let the body fix itself. This is our fundamental message. Your body is endowed with a God-given intelligence. It's the God-given intelligence inside your body, the spirit, the soul, the vital force, call it what you will, that's running the show. Our bodies are so smart they grew themselves all by themselves from a tiny single cell into us, and they're managing millions of biochemical processes right now outside of your conscious control. How is all that happening? Well, if the body's smart enough to grow itself and manage itself, you think the body's smart enough to heal itself? Naturopathic physicians say yes, and that's why longevity is so important. Because longevity is building a grassroots coalition of the informed, people all around the world who are sick and tired of being sick and tired of being played by bad science and played by lazy doctors, cowardly doctors who do not pay attention to the published literature. People have had it. And so what are we doing? We're growing a grassroots coalition of the informed, people all around the world who are dealing with a chronic illness and want to know what they can do right now to get on the other side of it with science-based, clinically verified medical therapeutics. Nobody does that better than longevity. I've been practicing naturopathic medicine for 27 years, and the therapeutics, the nutritional supplements developed by Longevity's founder, Dr. Joel Wallach, my mentor, colleague, and friend, work better than anything I've seen in 27 years. Why? Because his products are formulated on $25 million of federally funded research, which is in the Smithsonian Institute. This was a massive undertaking, and it is this old-fashioned, boots-on-the-ground, pragmatic, non-pharmaceutical centrist research which literally rewrote the book on medical nutrition. Dr. Wallach is the world's leading expert on the relationship between medical nutrition and chronic or acute disease. Nobody has done more research than Dr. Wallach, and nobody has treated more patients than Dr. Wallach. You know, if you've had it with the nonsense of the pharmaceutical industry, and you are finally ready, willing, and able for the first time in your life to give medical nutrition a try, then wouldn't it be best to learn from the expert? Well, in my opinion, you're a knucklehead if you don't give longevity a try. Because in over a quarter of a century of clinical work with real patients with real disease, the nutritional supplements delivered by longevity developed by Dr. Wallach produce more consistent, better results than any other nutritional supplement, and I've seen a lot. Here's the basic understanding of our message, right? Remember, this is holistic medicine. Remember the distinction, holism? Well, if this tank represents your body's nutrient needs, here's what you need to be healthy every day. 90 essential nutrients. We refer to these as 90 for life. Here's the breakdown: 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 2 essential fatty acids for a grand total of 90. That's what your body needs to get the job done. That's what your body needs to deal with life. Just like your automobile. What do you need? 6 quarts of oil? How much transmission fluid? How much power steering fluid, right? It's the same in the body. You need certain amounts of certain things. The only problem is these 90 essential nutrients are not all present in the food. They're not all there. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. So most people, knowing nothing about medical nutrition, just eating whatever they want, their nutritional tank is, if they're lucky, 50% full, if they're lucky. And then we walk down the road of life. We experience mental stress, physical stress, emotional stress, political stress, financial stress, the stress of aging, the stress of weather. Life is a great big bowl of stress. The stress burns through our nutrients. Now we're running on fumes and things start to break. Again, you don't get arthritis because you have a knee. You get arthritis because your body ran out of the stuff it needed to have a healthy knee. You don't get asthma because you have a lung. You get asthma because your lungs ran out of the stuff they needed to be healthy. You don't get clogged arteries because you have a heart. Because you have arteries. You get these things because your body has run out of the stuff it needs